time management, and we're going to have our professor here, Camila, to talk about time management.
Okay, so is everybody a business major? Okay, good. So I don't know a lot of. So what class is this a required faculty?
Business law.
Huh?
Business law.
Oh, okay. 13, 17, or whatever. All right, good. All right, well, it's good to have you here. So we'll talk about time management and prioritization. So I'm Curtis today, and I'm in the management department, so I hope I'll have to do something in some other class, but today we'll do this. Okay. All right, so first things first. So let's see. How should we do this in the most efficient way? So kind of get yourselves maybe into groups of 3, 4, something like that, no bigger than that. And just quickly introduce yourselves. So, who are you? What's your major? And the most important question, what is your morning routine like? All right, so go. Who are you? What's your So, did we have any interesting morning routines? Anybody hear anything interesting or unusual? All right, so how many people had some kind of routine that they followed every day? Okay, so a little more than half, it looks like. All right, so the other half of you just kind of roll out of bed and decide that day whether or not you want to go to your first class. All what the topic is and how crappy the professor is and all that. Okay, good. That's what I always assume happens. All right, so what's the purpose of all of this? The purpose is very simple here, okay? So, our goal is always to determine should we be more efficient or should we be more effective, right? That every decision we make ultimately kind of comes down to that, right? So whether or not you're going to get up and go to class, whether or not you have a routine, whether or not you're going to follow through with that routine, all that stuff, is really about efficiency and effectiveness, right? Can you agree? Okay. So what are efficiency and effectiveness? What are these two things? So efficiency is doing things right? So doing things the right way, minimizing waste of time and resources and things like that. Effectiveness is doing the right things, right? So making sure that as you do things right, you do things that actually matter, create value, etc., right? This is why some days you decide that you don't want to go to class, right? Because you decide that there's something more valuable like additional sleep or sanity or something like that, right? Okay. All right, so you don't go to class. So the question is, which one of these is more important? Should we be focused more often on doing the right things, doing things right, or doing the right things? So how many people would say we should focus more of our time and effort on efficiency, doing things right? Very many people. Okay, a few. How many people say we should spend more time focusing on effectiveness? Okay, not everybody's voting. Let's start keeping track of who's voting. All right, it's a trick question, right? What we need to do is focus on both, okay? So you can't do things the right way at the expense of doing things that actually matter, right? But you can't just constantly be trying to do only the right things and not concerned about whether or not you're doing them in a way that is efficient, that minimizes waste, okay? Why is this important? Because this right here is the foundational key to enhanced time management and productivity. you want to make better decisions about how to use your time and what to do with your time and how to be more productive and how to prioritize things better, then the first thing that you have to understand is, am I concerned right now with efficiency or am I concerned with effectiveness? Okay? And the key is that we should always try to be focused on both. Make sense? You with me? You might not with me. All right, good. Okay, so what do good students do that makes their time management or productivity or prioritization skills better than others? What do good students do? If you consider yourself a good student, what do you do? If you don't, and you observe others, what do they do?
Plan.
Yes, right here. Plan. Thank you. Yes.
Preparation.
Preparation. Preparation and planning. What else? Is that all they do?
Right.
Time. How do they manage time, though? That's what we're here to figure out. What do you mean?
By organize whatever the first thing I should do first.
Okay.
Do it first.
Okay.
And then go after that.
Okay. Good. Thank you. What did you say? Organize. Okay. And there was something over here. Yes.
Stick to the schedule.
Okay. They stick to the schedule. Good. Okay. It's okay to deviate every once in a while, right? Okay. We'll talk about that in a minute. Okay. Good. So these are good suggestions, right? All right. So what is it that they do that makes them effective and efficient? Okay. So Peter Drucker, one of the great management thinkers and sort of founders of studying management, says that there is nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should not be done at all. So if you want the fundamental difference between, or the fundamental distinction that helps you determine whether or not you should be focused on efficiency and effectiveness, here's a great question, right? Or here's a great quote. The question that goes along with this that's a great question is, if we weren't already doing this, would we start? Right? And if the answer is no, why are you doing it? Right? Why are you doing it? Okay? There's nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should not be done at all. You know this? Are you this person? Do you know these people? We call this structured procrastination, right? Peter Drucker died about 10 years ago, but when he was alive, they didn't have this term. This is a recent term that we've come up with. It's called structured procrastination. Anybody ever have the experience where you have one really important, big, sort of hairy project that you need to do, and you know it's on your list, you know you got to do it, and you do everything else under the sun that you can find to do as perfectly as you can do those things to try to avoid that one big thing you have to do? Right, that's structured procrastination. That's exactly what he's talking about, right? Doing with great efficiency that which doesn't need to be done at all. Ever clean your bathroom by accident? Most people don't clean their bathroom by accident, right? There's something that they want to do less than clean their bathroom. Then you'll clean your bathroom twice, right? Well, beautiful clean bathroom, but that project is still there. Right? Okay, so that's the challenge here. So what happens is, if we follow Drucker's recommendation, and if we're focused on efficiency and effectiveness, but making sure that we have the right balance of those two things, then what will happen is we start to put first things first, which is exactly what you were talking about, right? Determining what is the thing that needs to happen first. Not necessarily sequentially first, but what is the thing that's going to give me the most bang for my buck if I do it, right? So you got a couple of options, right? Clean the bathroom, do the big project. Which one's going to make you feel the best, right? You might enjoy the clean bathroom, but you're still going to have the nagging sense that you need to do the other thing, right? So this is going to give you the biggest bang for your buck. So first things first. Another way of thinking about this is sort of having the end in mind, right? What is the goal? What is the end result that we're after? And starting with that from the beginning. Okay? So these are the foundational pieces of effective time management and productivity. So effective people put first things first, and they don't waste time doing efficiently things that don't need to be done at all. Make sense? With me? Okay. We're laying the foundation here. Getting into the details in just a second. So how do we do this? How do we see this work? This is how we see it work. This is what we call the Franklin Covey time matrix. Anybody ever heard of Franklin Covey in here? No. Great. That's fantastic. It's not, but this is the digital age now. Okay, so before we all had these, right, which managed our lives for us, and some people still don't manage their lives here, that's okay. But before we had those to manage our lives, right, what did people do? Well, they sort of slept around a giant day planner, and they were sort of heavier on this one side, had this lean that became part of their lives for the rest of their life, right? And Franklin Covey was one of the companies that created these sort of day planner things. So Stephen Covey was a professor, and he wrote a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Anybody ever heard of this book, or the many variations on it? Okay, good. So 7 Habits was a book that Dr. Covey wrote before he passed away he wrote it a long time ago. He passed away a few years ago. And in that book, he looks at 7 things that effective people do. And he presents, as part of his discussion on time management and productivity, this time matrix, okay? And the time matrix, classic business school matrix, right, gives us an axis that looks at things that are urgent and not urgent, and gives us an axis that looks at things that are important and not important, right? And so we have 4 quadrants up here. So you've got quadrant 1, which is the quadrant of sort of extraordinary productivity, right? This is the this is the quadrant of extraordinary productivity. I just made a mistake. Okay. Which is the quadrant of sort of crisis, right? It's things that are urgent and really important. So flat tire, right? Exam tomorrow, paper due tonight, car breaks down, got to go to the hospital, right? Things like that. Okay. We can't get rid of these things; they happen, right? But we can try to minimize their impact by being prepared for them, having backup plans, all that kind of stuff. Down below that, we have quadrant 3. Things that are urgent but not important. Most of the things that are urgent and not important are things that other people, we get tricked into doing other people's stuff, right? I should be careful and not say we get tricked, because you only control yourself and your choices. But if you choose to do other people's stuff, that's how you end up in quadrant 3. And that's a place that a lot of people spend a lot of time, and then they're really sort of bitter and resentful at other people because they've made a choice to give in to that stuff. Okay? Quadrant 4, down here in this corner, is stuff that's not urgent and not important. So it's stuff that just wastes time. Now, there's a really important key to this time-wasting stuff, and we'll come back to it in just a second. Okay? But up here is the quadrant of extraordinary productivity. So this is the stuff that is not urgent, but is important. Right? So this is the project that's got to be done. That would probably be done better if you broke it down into stages and worked on it a little bit every day and were done ahead of time, so you had time to sort of, revise it and check it. Yeah, I've been grading papers all day, right? So you could tell the people that wrote it last night, and you can tell the people that I'm not looking at you. Okay. All right. So these are the important things that take time. We have to invest in them, right? But they take time at the expense of other things. So they're all the planning and all the things that you said that effective people do, right? But life gets in the way of them because there are crises, and because other people show up, and because you get home and you're tired and you just want to sit there and do the Netflix binge, right? I do too. All right. So how do we get into quadrant 2? Because that's the really important question. Well, first of all, so if you're in quadrant 2, you're the effective person, right? If you're in quadrant 1, you're the firefighter. Again, we can't get rid of quadrant 1. It's not going to go away, right? Q3 we can get rid of. Quit saying yes to other people. They'll go find somebody else to bother. I promise. I promise. Okay? And Q4, you don't want to be there. But we're going to come back to Q4 in just a second. All right. So what we're trying to do is expand the top half. So eliminate these things, and then if possible, we even want to shrink this, right? So that we expand Q2 and spend most of our time over here on those important things that take time. So you want to live above the line. But there's a key about quadrant 4. Okay? So it's easy to say, well, I need to spend all my time in quadrant 2, where I'm extraordinarily productive, and I'm incredibly effective, and I'm only doing things that matter, right? And anybody in here ever get tired, even when you're doing really important things that matter? And so at the end of the day, you do want to go home and binge watch for a little while, right? So if you're just totally fried and exhausted at the end of the day, and you just think, man, I couldn't have a good idea if it showed up and kissed me in the face, kind of thing, right? You know what I'm talking about? So if you're feeling like that, should you be forcing yourself to try to do more Q2 stuff, or do you think that it might not be a bad idea to veg and binge watch for a little while so that you can kind of chill out and relax and increase your productivity again? Yeah? Okay, so see, Q4 activities can be Q2 activities when they're used for the right purpose. Now, if you know you need to do something and it's like 8 o'clock in the morning and you settle in for your Netflix binge, that's probably a Q4, not a Q2. If it's the end of the day and you've been incredibly productive and you're just fried, probably a Q2 to sit down and watch a little TV and try to relax. Remember, productivity, especially stuff that uses your brain, It's just like a muscle. You can't run forever, right? You got to stop at some point, or else your legs are going to stop for you, right? The brain's the same way. Okay. You with me? Okay, don't misunderstand me. I'm not giving you free reign to go binge on Netflix whenever you want. Get fired. Okay. All right, so let's talk about how we avoid quadrant 1. The first thing that we want to determine is, are you addicted to urgency? Because you might not need to avoid quadrant 1, but let's see if you do. Okay, so somewhere, something you can write on, a phone where you can just make quick notes. I'm just going to give you a quick little rundown quiz here. Let's see how many people are urgency addicted. So the answers to these questions, there's 10 questions. The answers are yes or no. That's your only option. Okay? And you just record yours down, and then we'll have you total them up, and we'll see if you're urgency. All right, you ready? Good? All right, so yes or no. Number 1, I crammed for tests the night before. I crammed for tests the night before. On the whole, for most of these things. Okay? Yes or no? Number 2, I write papers the last minute before they are due. I write papers at the last minute before they're due. Number 3, I'm late a lot. I'm late a lot. Number 4, I take things as they come rather than plan ahead. I take things as they come or show up rather than plan ahead. Number 5, I have a hard time getting motivated unless there's pressure. I have a hard time getting motivated unless there's pressure. Number 6, I answer texts, it ought to be snaps, within seconds of receiving them. 10 o'clock last night, I'm trying to go to sleep. My wife's laying there. All right. I don't know where we are. Number 7, I hate to wait in lines or get behind slow people. I hate to wait in lines or get behind slow people. Number 8, I seem to always rush between places and events. I seem to always rush between places and events. Number 9, I always wish I had done things sooner. I always wish I had done things sooner. And number 10, I often do things I shouldn't have said yes to in the first place. I often do things I shouldn't have said yes to in the first place. All right, so total up your yeses. Total up your yeses. All right, how many people are in the 8 to 10 category? Uh-oh. Okay, so we're going to have a second session for y'all after the first one. So. All right, how many people are in the 5 to 7 category? Okay, yeah, that's where the majority of the people usually are. And my people in 1 to 4? Lots of people in here. Good. So why are we having an effective productivity workshop for all these effectively productive people? All right, so if you're an 8 to 10, you are probably an urgency addict. And, yeah, okay. All right, if you're in the 5 to 7 category, you are at risk of becoming an urgency addict. You're sort of teetering. You could go either way. We want to get you back in the 1 to 4 category, not have you fall over into the bad territory. All right, if you're 1 to 4, you're all right, and you can just chill out for a few minutes. Okay, so how do we get over urgency addiction? That is the question. So, some tips. Number 1, say no. Notice what I've done here with the no. What follows the no? A period that I've underlined just for emphasis, right? No is a complete sentence. That's what Henry Cloud, a psychologist, tells us in the book Boundaries. He says, no is a complete sentence. You know, the interesting thing about people that we often struggle to say no to is that they are usually people who are just looking for somebody to do whatever they need done. And the reality is that if you tell them no, they're not as hurt and offended as you think they are. They're just going to move on to try to find the next person that will do whatever they need done. Most of the time. Not always. Okay? So the first tip that I got to tell you, and look, if I can't stand up here and tell you that I'm perfect at this either, okay? But that is no is a complete sentence. Okay? Number 2, break the cycle. Break what cycle? How many people, even if you weren't in the 8 to 10 urgency addicted category, how many people have noticed that you have a tendency to say yes without pausing to think about what you're saying yes to? Okay, good. Lots of people, right? We all have this problem, right? Especially in our fast-moving world today. We say yes quickly. Break that cycle. Before you say yes, tell people you'll get back to them. Let me think about this. I'm not sure, right? This buys you time to figure out whether or not you really want to say yes. And if you still want to say yes, say yes. If not, it buys you time. Okay? And then you got to go back to number one. No, it was a complete sentence. All right, so break the cycle. By the way, most of you are still young-ish. So am I. Don't be fooled. All right. This is a good habit to learn while you're youngish, because it's a very difficult habit to break when you get older. And the last tip here, good is the enemy of great, says Jim Collins, the author of Good to Great. One of the reasons that a lot of us have problems sometimes with being extremely effective is that we settle. We go for good enough instead of trying to do the best, right? Okay. And there's no real solution to good as the enemy of the great than a good old-fashioned personal kick in the pants. When you don't feel motivated, sometimes you just have to motivate yourself. Okay. All right, good. So, what else do we know? How do you get things done? That's the real question. Well, guess what? There's a book on this. And it's called Getting Things Done by a guy named David Allen. And if you take my graduate class at some point, and you're an MBA student, we'll talk about this book. We'll spend a bunch of time on it. And so this book has some tips in it, all kinds of great tips. It's an excellent book that tells you how to get things done, most importantly, in a stress-free way. Right? So notice that not getting things done is not really what makes you feel bad. Not getting things done and feeling crappy about it is what makes you feel bad. Right? Let me say that a different way. Not doing is not the problem. Not doing and feeling bad about it is the problem. So how do you not do and not feel bad at the same time? Prioritize? Maybe. It's actually even simpler than that. Even simpler than that. So in the book, among many other things, at a very broad, high level, David Allen tells us 3 things that we need to do to have stress-free productivity. The first thing, capture everything. How many people in here have had an idea more than once today? Yeah. How many of you have thought to yourself, oh, I need to do such and such more than once today? The same thing. Okay, right. And that's what we're talking about here, right? Why are you... I don't have an idea more than once a day unless I like the idea. Right? So you've got to get in the habit of capturing everything. We'll go back to this in just a second. What's the second thing you got to do? Clarify the outcomes and actions. See, just because people capture things, that's great. But how many people in here have a to-do list? Okay. But most people are walking around with a to-do list that is a bunch of incomplete stuff with unclear outcomes. Right? I'll tell you what shows up on to-do lists in just a second. What's the third thing that you got to do? Use appropriate maps. Help yourself see what you need to see at the right moment. So let's go through these steps real quick. So step 1 is capture. So capture everything that you have in your head. You should leave nothing in your head ever. The first key to not doing and feeling good about not doing is knowing what you're not doing. The first key to not doing and feeling good about it is knowing what you're not doing. So I'm with you for, another half an hour, I don't know where we are, somewhere, something like that, right? I'm with you for another half an hour or so. Look, everybody's checking their watches. Sit through another half an hour on this? We're almost done here. Okay, so I'm with you for another half an hour or something like that, right? If there's anything on my mind other than being here with you for this hour-long period of time, I am doing you a disservice, right? You didn't pay your good, hard-earned time, not money, right? Nobody would pay money for this. Okay. You didn't pay your good, hard-earned time to come sit in here for an hour for me to rip you off by thinking about all the other crap that I have to do, right? Right? When are you most dissatisfied in class? When you go to a class where the professor is distracted doing other stuff or wasting your time, right? When are you most dissatisfied in meetings? Or at shows, or at games, or at anything else? When the the other people or persons are distracted and are ripping you off, wasting your time, right? So you got to know what you're not doing. How do you know what you're not doing? You capture it all, right? If you can look at a list and say, this is all the stuff I'm not doing right now, wouldn't that be great? Okay, so have you ever felt really stressed out? Anybody ever been really stressed out? And you know you got a bunch of stuff to do, you got a bunch of stuff on your mind. You get a piece of paper and write down a list. You ever do this? Yeah. Feel better? Right? You still have a bunch of crap to do, right? List is long. I mean, there's some panic when you write that list down, right? You're sort of like, oh, I have a lot of stuff to do, right? But at the same time, you feel better. You didn't do anything. You just wrote it down, right? The cognitive weight of trying to keep stuff in your head is overwhelming. And all the stuff we have to keep in our heads today makes it even more overwhelming than it's ever been before. But your brain, as smart as the human brain is really stupid. And you can trick it. And the way that you trick it is write it all down. If your brain is not trying to remember everything, it doesn't worry about it. How many of you told yourself, like, within the last 6 months that you needed to clean your closet, and you still haven't cleaned the closet? You get this nagging sense every time you walk by your closet or walk into your closet that's like, I need to clean the closet. You know what I'm talking about? That's because somewhere deep in your mind is going, why are we not cleaning the closet? You said 6 months ago that we need to clean the closet. We need to clean the closet right now. And you're like, but I gotta go, right? And then you have this cognitive dissonance. Because your brain wants you to clean the closet because it doesn't understand that you can't do the 50 things that you're telling it you need to do all at once. But if you write them all down, it doesn't worry about it. Why? Because all of a sudden it goes, hey, we got all that stuff written down. We'll get to it at some point. And it goes, ah. This is the difference between people who drink to avoid their to-do list and people who drink because they want to do that instead of their to-do list. All right, good. So how do you capture everything? All right. Something that you're writing on, wherever you just did your yeses and nos and whatever. I'm going to give you like 2 minutes, and I want you to just write down every single thing that's on your mind. I don't care if it's on a calendar or a to-do list or anything else already. Just write it down. Just write it down. Okay? Go.
Would it be like more short-term stuff, like a day, or?
It doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter what order it comes in. Don't try to organize it or order it. Just write it down. I'm just going to throw out a few things just to kind of maybe jog your memory. Anybody you need to call? Anybody you need to email? Any papers, projects, presentations, tests coming up that you need to be doing something about? Anything you need from any store? Anything you want from any store? Anything that's broken that needs to be fixed? Anything that needs a permanent home? That's always a fun activity too, right? Have you go through your bag and find one thing that doesn't belong there forever, that's been there for more than just a day? Everybody in this room can find that. Okay, you keep writing. I'm going to go on. Okay, you're not done once you write it all down. You feel a lot better. Okay, so how many people, as you wrote stuff down, it's okay if you felt that sort of gnawing sense of anxiety, but at the same time, feel a little bit better. Now, of course, the base point is that you had to have been a little stressed out before that. Okay. All right, good. We're making progress. But you're not done yet, right? You can't just stop there and go, okay, good, I wrote everything down. Now I'm just, that's the end of my life. Okay, no, it doesn't quite work like that, right? You can't stop there. Why? Because here's what most people have on their to-do list. This is what ends up on most people's to-do list. This is a good one right here, right? Okay. Dad. cat, paper. Right? These are the kind of things that end up on people's to-do list. You may not have written that down, but these are the kind of things that end up on most people's to-do list. These are still incomplete lists of unclear stuff, right? What are you going to do about that, right? So then you start asking all these questions, right? So let's say Celine wrote down, Celine is getting a big one today. So let's say that Celine wrote down, Dad on her to-do list. What are you going to do about Dad, Celine? Well, Dad's birthday's coming up in a couple of weeks. Well, what are you going to do about Dad's birthday? Well, I'm going to get him a gift. Well, what are you going to get him? Well, I really want to see if my sister wants to go in with me on this thing. Okay, so what do you need to do? Well, I guess I need to ask my sister if she wants to go in with me on that. Great. Do you have your sister's phone number? Or how would you get in touch with your sister? Yeah, I guess I'll text her. Great. Do you have your sister's phone number to text her? Yes. Great. So now, next action, right? The next physical, visible thing that Celine needs to do on this big, giant project that she called Dad, right, is text her sister to see if she wants to go in with her on a present. Right? Notice how many steps we had to work backward from the word Dad to that. So it's not a problem that she has something like Dad on her to-do list unless she has like 100 things like Dad on her to-do list, right? Because then she looks at her to-do list and goes, Dad, I need this. Oh, his birthday. This. And she has to go through every one of those steps every time for 100 things, right? What do we go through? Like 5 steps to get to text sister? Okay, so let's take 5, multiply that by 100. How many steps do you have to go through to get to something you can do on your to-do list? 500? Are you going to do that? No. What are you going to do? Clean the bathroom to avoid doing all the crap that's on your to-do list, right? Okay, you see where I'm going with this? So you need something that you can glance at this quickly and go, that. Right? That's it. This is the world we live in today. You can avoid it if you don't want to. If you don't want to do this, right? But you're going to walk around with a gnawing sense of anxiety. You're probably going to drop the ball and miss things. And you're not going to be the kind of well-rounded business professionals that we're trying to produce in this college, right? The ones that we're trying to produce are those that go, that's what I need to do right now. And this is how I'm moving forward, right? So that's the next step. So how do you do that? There's 2 questions that I essentially asked Celine. Actually, I didn't ask her one of them. Okay? I asked her one question, which was the next action question, right? But we worked backwards to get to what is the next physical, visible action that she needs to do, right? Pick up her phone and text her sister, right? The other question was kind of the very first thing that I asked her, right? What are you going to do about Dad? In other words, what is the outcome that she's after, right? Gift for Dad, right? So now we've got 2 pieces of information that are really important. We have the outcome, which is the stake in the ground, right? Which tells us I need to get a gift for Dad, right? So you can call this a project, you can call it an outcome, you can call it a goal, you can call it a stake in the ground, you can call it whatever the heck you want to call it, right? But the bottom line is this is the stake in the ground that says when this is true, when reality matches this, I'm done, right? Good? And then we back up from there to say, what's the next physical, visible thing that needs to happen to get me closer to there? And sometimes this stake in the ground and the next physical, visible action are the same thing, right? So, for example, if you put cat on your list, what does it actually mean? Well, I need cat food or the cat's going to die, right? Okay. So if you need cat food or the cat's going to die, there's really only one action here, right? Go to the store and get cat food, right? There's nothing else in between, right? Okay. As opposed to the Dad thing. There's still a lot in between there. So we need the stake in the ground for Dad. For cat food, well, let's just go to the store, right? Write yourself a little sticky note or something like that. Make yourself a little errands list. I don't know. Okay? Got it? With me? So outcomes and actions. You think computer code? Zeros and ones, right? The foundational building blocks of stress-free productivity. You're clarifying for everything in your life. What's the outcome? What's the next action? And then what's the next action? And then what's the next action? You don't have to define all the next actions to begin with, right? You just need to define one at a time. But as soon as you complete one, what's the next one? It's like a bookmark, right? You're reading a book. You get to page 176. You don't just close the book and go 176, 176, 176 for like 3 days, right? And then you come back. No, you put a bookmark in there, right? So completing an action and not creating a next action is like not putting a bookmark in the book. Good? All right. Third thing, maps. All this stuff is worthless if you don't see the stuff you need to see at the right time. When I'm in a classroom with my Principles of Management class, I don't need to see anything else except stuff that's associated with Principles of Management, right? I don't need to see a list of phone calls that I need to make. I'm not going to be making phone calls in class, right? I don't need to see a list of the stuff that I need to talk to my human resources management class about, right? Because I'm not with them. I don't need to see a list of stuff that I need to work on at the computer. Because I'm teaching, right? When I'm at the grocery store, I don't need to see a list of stuff that I need to do when I have a phone handy, right? I'm probably not going to be making calls at the grocery store. Those awkward people walking around the grocery store, right? And they come up behind you while you're like trying to get something and they're talking and you know, but then you realize that they're not talking. Okay, so, all right, so you want to sort of subdivide these things into the places where action happens. That'll make your life a lot easier, right? So break your 50 things on your to-do list down to all the next actions, and you've got 50, maybe more, because you could have more than one at once, right? Maybe you've got 100 next actions, right? 100 next actions. You could have that many in your life right now. You think, I'm not busy, right? You could have 100 next actions in your life right now. So if you've got 100 next actions, you want to sit down and look at one list of 100 things every time you're trying to figure out what to do next? No, you just want to see the ones that you can only do. I don't want to see the stuff that I can only do at home while I'm here. I'm not at home. I may want to be home, but I'm still here, right? Make sense? Okay. So dividing things up into categories that make sense for you in your life. One other tip. Do you have any cooks in here? People that like to cook? Okay, good. Are you inspired to cook and create fantastic, delicious, excellent gourmet meals when your kitchen is dirty and there's dirty dishes everywhere? Okay, he says yes. Nobody else says yes. Good for you. All right. Most people are going no, right? Why? Because you know that the first thing you got to do is clean up the kitchen, right? And if you're all inspired to cook and you come home and you got to clean up the kitchen first, it kind of damages your mood, right? Right? Yeah, the same thing's true for your whole life, right? So if you're starting from a dirty kitchen when you walk into your day, you're not real inspired to be real productive for the rest of the day, right? So one last tip on this stuff, on maps. Make sure your stuff has a home, right? And return it to its home. Okay. And then you want to review these things on a weekly basis. What should you do on a weekly basis? The first thing you want to do, who am I, right? What are the different roles I play in life? And what are the goals that I have associated with all of those roles, right? So again, clarifying, what are those bigger stakes in the ground? So some roles, right? I'm a teacher. I'm a son. I'm a husband. I'm a friend. I don't know. There's probably some other stuff in there too. Okay? I have these all written down. There's roles, right? I have goals in each one of those things, right? Hey, so checking in with those things. Then the next thing you want to do, what's coming up in the next week, right? What's coming up in the next week that I need to get ready for? What's a good indication of what's coming up in the next week? Hey, a calendar, right? Now you laugh, but most people don't know how to use a calendar correctly, right? So there's 3 simple things that go on a calendar. Time-specific information, appointments, places you have to be at a certain time. Day-specific information, stuff that you need to know on a particular day. And day-specific actions, stuff that has to be done on a particular day. Those things go on a calendar, right? Those last 2 things, day-specific information and day-specific actions, a great place to put those on a calendar is in that little all-day events bar, right? That's what my calendar looks like. It's got little stuff in the all-day events bar that's like, need to do this today, right? And then all my time-specific stuff is there as well. Why is this important? Because on a day-to-day basis, somebody walks into my office and says, hey, you want to go have lunch, right? All I have to do is glance at the calendar. Anything that's got to be done today, or that's relevant today, is going to be on my calendar. Right? One tool to be able to answer that question. Look at the calendar. Yes, let's go have lunch. No, I got to go do this passport event. I wish I could have lunch with you. They're not going to like it. Okay. All right, good. And then the third thing is the big rocks. So what are the most important things that need to be done during the next week? What are the most important things that need to be done during the next week? You can define important however you want, right? Payoff, urgency, whatever. But what are the things that need to be done during the next week? And you want to get your schedule, your life built around those things. You with me? Okay. So that's a little bit of weekly planning. All right. Lastly, let's quickly talk about natural planning. So natural planning, not organic, no preservatives planning. This is the natural planning method that your brain will go through anytime it tries to plan something. Anybody in here ever try to plan something? There's a model that your brain will use every single time. By the way, everybody in here tries to plan stuff. If I told you to stop planning, you try to plan how to stop planning. I'm not kidding. Okay, so what's the first thing that you do? The first thing you always do is define what are the purpose and the principles. What do these two things mean? Why are we doing this? What are we doing? And how? Right? How do we play? Anybody ever try to play a game where the rules aren't clear? Or you don't know how to win? That's like not having principles. We've all done this, right? Just being silly. And then what happens? You know, somebody gets mad, somebody gets hurt, somebody gets their feelings hurt, right? It's like Monopoly, right?
Yeah.
Nobody ever leaves happy at the end of Monopoly. Okay, so purpose and principles. What are we doing, why, and how? Okay, good. The next thing then is vision. What does success, wild success, look like? Right? Now you do this just as simply with stuff like whether or not to get out of bed and go to class as you do with major mambo projects, right? So you have this little vision when you wake up in the morning and your alarm goes off and you think, oh, I want to go to this class, right? You have this vision, and you have two visions. One is you still asleep, and one is you in class. And you choose between these visions, right? And whichever one you choose, you then take all the actions necessary to make it a reality. That's how you get to class, right? This is how you get home also, right? It's very easy to think that the way we get home every day is that we get in our car and, okay, now I'm going to back up, and then I'm going to turn left, and now I'm going to turn right, and now I'm going to turn left on this street. That's not what you do, right? You just create a mental image of yourself at home in your driveway, right? And you remove everything that doesn't look like that. That's why, have you ever had the experience where you get home and you think, how did I get here? When did I get here? Yeah, okay, right. That's why, right? Because you're just removing obstacles that don't match the initial vision you said. By the way, the next time you're going to do that, can you let me know so that I'm not on the road while you're driving around in sort of this out of it state? Okay, good. So vision, right? The next thing we're going to do is brainstorm. This is where people suck. Well, this is one of the places where people suck. Is it brainstorming? And you know why they're so bad at brainstorming? It's because of when they were in 4th and 5th grade. What happened when you were in 4th or 5th grade? You took an English class, okay? And you took an English class from somebody who taught you how to write essays, right? And what did you have to learn to do along with learning how to write an essay that had to do with planning and organizing? What was that first step? It was something else you had to create, and you had to turn it in with your essay. You remember this? The outline. Good. You have rough draft too, but the outline is the real key piece, okay? So the outline, right? And so Miss Williams, or whatever your English teacher, that was not my English teacher in 4th grade, but she comes in and she's got her lesson plan. She's going to teach you how to make an outline, right? What does an outline start with? It always starts with Roman numeral 1, 2, and 3, right? Your major headings. And then you're going to have some major subheadings, right? And those are represented by a capital A and a capital B, right? And you have to have an A and a B, right? You understand, like the fires of hell will be unleashed on you if you have an A and a B, right? You can have 3 good ideas at once. You can have A, B, and C, but you can't just have one. There is nobody in this room, myself included, and I mean no offense by this, that can have 2 ideas of equal value simultaneously today, much less when you were 9 years old. Okay? So I don't understand the A and the B thing. Then you might have some subheadings, which would be your 1 and 2, and then you might have some subheadings, which would be your little A and your little B, right? And you know exactly what I'm talking about, and you fill this out for all the Roman numerals, and you looked at this and you went, thank you, Miss Williams, for this key to life. That looks great. Thank you for teaching me how to plan and organize. But she didn't leave well enough alone. What'd she do? She sent you home to do an assignment, right? So you go home and you got to write a paper about ducks, right? So you get your pencil, get your wide ruled paper, because you didn't use college ruled. Did you ever try to use wide ruled paper now? Like you feel like you're drunk or something, right? Okay, so you got your wide ruled paper, you got your pencil, ducks at the top, right? Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 2, Roman numeral 3. And then you just sort of stared at it, right? Sort of like this. Wasn't this like the most agonizing moment of your educational career up to this point, right? Did anybody start sweating blood? Like, this is awful. Okay. And then, of course, a couple of really smart people were like, oh, Roman numeral 1, intro, Roman numeral 3, conclusion, right? Roman numeral 2 was a real problem for you. Okay, good. So what'd you do? You sat there and you went, man, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And then you did exactly what we all did. Man, your outlines matched your essays perfectly because you went to the encyclopedia or to Wikipedia or to whatever, right? And you plagiarized something about ducks and retrofitted an outline to it. Anybody not do that at least once in your life? There's a testament to the education system, right? The problem is that brainstorming is not the same thing as organizing. Brainstorming is generating ideas. Organizing is putting those ideas into some kind of order that makes sense and eliminating the ones that don't make. When we try to combine these two steps, we create all kinds of problems. You don't know what ideas you should keep and what order to put them in if you haven't made sure you generated every possible idea to begin with. That's why you got to do this first. That's why you got to do this first too, right? And then the last step, of course, is once you've organized them all, what's the next physical action? Make sense? To get up and go to class, you'll do this. To go have dinner, you'll do this. To stop planning, you'll do this. If you really want to apply this stuff, the best thing you can do is go teach somebody else how to do it, right? That's the best way to learn something. So go tell somebody else that you know what you learned today, one or two things, and see if they become part of your life. Thanks.